to support the platform just in case anything like this happens again, you can do it by way of PayPal, Patreon, Cash App, and also by the Anchor. And you can also further support the platform by way of going to the Teespring store or the shoe store that is located in the comment section below. The owner of the defunct Indian Point nuclear facility states that it's planning to dump about 1 million gallons of radioactive water into the Hudson River. The move, which the company describes as the best option for the waste, could happen as early as August. A February 2nd meeting of the Indian Point Decommission Oversight Board heated up when the plant's owner, Holtec International, disclosed the plan as part of its lengthy closure process. The contaminated water could just naturally and safely decay and storage on site. Environmental groups and residents are also concerned that this could harm their community, as the Hudson River is already a federally designated toxic Superfund site. Rich Baroni, Holtec's site vice president for Indian Point, agreed to give the community at least a month's notice before any radioactive discharge into the Hudson River began. But Holtec is well within its legal rights and permits to discharge waste at the same rate as it did when operating. And it doesn't need federal, state, or local approval to dump the contaminated water. This practice is standard for nuclear plants. Nearly 2 years have passed since Indian Point shut down its third and final reactor in the village of Buchan, located in Hudson's East Bank, about 30 miles north of Midtown. Towards the end of the 59-year-old lifespan, the plant had more than 2,000 megawatt capacity, providing electricity to more than 2 million homes, or 13% of the state's power demand. Holtec received about 2.4 billion in funds, shouldered by ratepayers to decommission the plant, and it was to do so in 12 years, which is in accordance with town's wishes to repurpose the site. But Holtec and the surrounding community are still debating what to do with Indian Point's radioactive remains. Quote, yes, you can do it. Discharge radioactive water. It's normal practice, but should you when you have other options that might avoid this additional release of radioactivity to the environment? That was stated by Edwin Lyman, the director of nuclear power safety of the Union of Concerned Scientists, a nonprofit science advocacy. Also stated, it may only cause a low risk to the environment as far as we know, but there are other options here, and why not try to minimize harm? Neil Sheehan, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of Public Affairs, stated virtually all nuclear plants in the United States discharge water containing low levels of radioactivity to the waterway of which they are connected. Tritium cannot be filtered out, but a member of the public would have to ingest a significant amount of it for there to even be the possibility of a health concern, and radioactive water released from the Indian Point is greatly diluted by the flows in the Hudson River. The soon to be released water has been treated and filtered with charcoal and resin, which removes metals and chloride, but it still contains low levels of tritium, a radioactive form of hydrogen and a byproduct of nuclear fusion that could accumulate in the Hudson River. Humans can breathe in or ingest tritium, which emits low levels of beta radiation. As it decays and eventually becomes helium in large quantities, it can elevate the risk of cancer. Tritium also cannot be extracted from water because the two are so chemically similar. The Riverkeeper, a local environmental agency group, had this to state. It's time to draw the line against using the Hudson as a dumping ground for tritium, a radioactive isotope found in the wastewater. Options are limited when it comes to disposing of radioactive waste, and only three methods are typically used for tainted water. The first and most expedient one is to dump small batches, about 18,000 gallons, intermittently, which is the method favored by Holtec. The second way is to slowly evaporate the radioactive water and release it into the atmosphere, which Lyman states, quote, hardly any better than pouring it into the river. The third procedure entails transporting the contaminated substance to another site, which could pose an environmental justice issue depending on where the land is. Patrick O'Brien, Holtec International's Director of Government Affairs and Communications had this to state: "You are taking hundreds of truck trips using fossil fuels, thousands of miles to then either liquidly discharge or evaporate or mix and bury that water in the same manner you could just do here." Lyman stated a fourth option will be leaving the radioactive water on site to decay over time into non harmful helium. Quote, "Keep storage indefinitely, and eventually the problem will solve itself." For tritium, the process would take over 24 years. Lyman considers this the best option because it minimizes the effects on the environment. It's also viable because other radioactive materials, spent fuel generated from operating the plant, remains on site and will take hundreds of thousands of years to decay. This material includes plutonium and uranium. Lyman stated that this waste has no place to go and will therefore be here for a long time. So there's no rush to deal with the radioactive water while spent fuel continues to sit on the property. Most radioactive waste is stored where it is generated, and federal regulations allow 60 years for decommissioning. That spent fuel could remain at the site even after the decommissioning is completed. Term is going to degrade, and the only way to protect the environment from the degradation is to bury it in a deep geological repository. Holtec has a decommissioned plant and already transferred the spent fuel from two of its three inoperative reactors into leak tight steel cylinders, a method known as dry case storage. It plans to remove the third unit spent later this year. The dry cast will remain at the facility until an interim or a permanent dispensary becomes available. Currently, the United States has no permanent sites for this waste, and more than 90,000 metric tons of highly radioactive nuclear waste, including spent fuel, remains near its site of origin without permanent storage. Holtec is investigating the option of interim storage in New Mexico and expects to get a license for it by next month. The next meeting for the Indian Point Decommissioning Oversight Board will take place on April 27th at around 6 p.m. at Cortland Town Hall. Participants have the option to also attend virtually. So here we are, yet again, and like I said, this is more information that I didn't know about. I didn't know that these nuclear plants were able to dump radioactive water back into the exact same area of which they were pulling the water directly out of. I didn't know anything about that, so I learned something brand new today directly from the story. Um, this is a problem. This is why I believe in alternative energy sources that don't harm the environment. So it's a symbiotic relationship, um, such as like using giant fans underneath the water to catch the underwater currents that are directly there. And because they're catching the normal currents, they're going to spin and generate. It's the same thing as if you were to put the same fans directly um, on top of the ground, and you allow them to catch the wind as it blows by and different things of that nature. You have kinetic, um, you have heat. Like I said, you have a variety of different methods, including dams as well. You have a variety of different methods that will make renewable and clean energy that is not going to harm the environment. Um, it's just crazy to think that this is something that's been going on for oh so long, right? And how they have these safety requirements of, oh, well, humans can take in this much of this chemical or this radiation, and the water's completely fine. It's when it gets to a certain point and a certain amount where it's going to have this type of effect where it can heighten cancer. And that's when they were talking about tritium, right? They were stating that low amounts of tritium is completely fine and dandy to humans to basically eat and just drink whatever. But once it gets to a certain point of a heightened level, then you have a better chance of getting cancer due to the effect of that chemical. The main thing that I'm looking at is none of these people are talking about the long term effects of people who live in these areas, fish in these areas, drink from the water, long-term effects of the environment and different things in that nature. It's great that they're saying that, hey, we use resin and we use, you know, charcoal to basically filter out a lot of the other heavy things that are directly there. Other things we can't directly pull out because it's too similar to the chemical composition of water. You know, uh, no one knows the long-term effects of any of this because just like how they can store it, the earth can just so happen to store certain things as well. The earth is not going to just automatically take all of this stuff in as if it's naturally reoccurring. It's going to do something with it, or it's going to reject it. Either which way, something is going to happen, and it's not going to be anything that's positive. This is why it comes to a point in time that human beings need to wisen up and educate themselves on different types of sources when it comes to generating electricity and all the other things that we just so happen to need. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that we're doing is pretty much tearing up the planet. That's it. That's it. Because at a moment in time, let this planet start just basically decaying. Let it just start decaying. All of this stuff that they're talking about is like, oh well, the planet is already dying, it's already decaying, it doesn't really matter. So we're just gonna release, anything that we want to because it doesn't matter anymore. They're acting like they care when realistically they don't. They don't. And as I've stated before, like this is a shame. Like you're literally watching them pollute the area directly around you. And then once these areas are polluted, guess what? You'll start to have the government swoop in, be like, oh, well, this is radiated to a certain amount, this is polluted to a certain amount. And they're gonna be like, all right, well, we're just gonna snatch up this land and we're just gonna start building smart cities. So just be happy with it. Like, we're gonna give you guys some beautiful cities, 15-minute cities. Be prepared. It's great, it's awesome. So, like I said, I don't know what to tell people. I just hope people are, pretty much, prepared for the things that are to come. As I keep telling people, they'll get to the point where they'll be so honest, where they'll be bold and they'll put things directly in front of your face. But yet, nobody's going to take it for the gospel that it is.